The His Go Friday podcast is brought to you in part by Messenger Fellowship, living the kingdom, fulfilling the call, proclaiming the truth.
How's it going, everyone? This is yours truly, Cameron Fry, His Go Friday, coming at you on a Sunday morning before church. Hope you're doing well, that you're hanging in there, that you're having a wonderful 2023. It's been a while. This may be only the second pod that we've cut all year. Definitely, while there's been plenty of content churned out this year, we've dialed back on the podcast a little bit to focus on some other endeavors, and probably the most notable one is one you're not seeing, and that is the Juby Journey book being written. Certainly, there were plenty of posts between August 21 and the end of last year, at least 10 pieces. And even this year, I've written some soap Bible studies inspired by the Juby Journey. But the biggest project is one that is going to hopefully make its presence known next year. So I've had to cut back in certain streams, content streams, the podcast being at the top of the list, to invest in the book. But it's been on my radar to cut this particular pod just because it's part of an annual tradition. Every July 1, I look back the first half of the year, what life lessons, what revelations, insights have accrued that need to be shared. Certainly there's certain convictions that are between you and God, you and your family, but there's some others that are more public domain in nature that are worth sharing. So I'm going to look back the last 6 months and kind of take inventory of the year with you. Of course, your years will be different, but certainly the journey that Liz and I have been on, it's been a very different year than the past couple. Totally fine, but it's just been a unicorn type year so far, and a tale of two halves, really, the first 3 months and the last 3 months. And I'm going to break it down, kind of where we're at, where we're going. Certainly there's some big picture housekeeping matters I want to get to, but that's not the reason why I'm cutting this, so I'm going to wait till the end. So no particular order. Liz and I did a brief chat. I took some quiet time yesterday, Saturday, we're in the early stages of a long 4-day weekend. So again, the perfect time to cut this. Before I dive into any points, I just want to kind of give us a raw analysis of where we're at. So Juby passed away September of last year. We were in NICU mode for almost a year and a quarter, and certainly the Juby journey at large has been, I would say, at its core, a full year and a half when you're factoring the pregnancy, not just what went down in the NICU. And in 2 words, grief journey come to mind. If I'm summarizing this year, we're still in the middle of processing and understanding the emotional side effects, the after effects of losing a child in infancy. We've watched, in fact, in the past couple of days, we've watched not only Rabbit Hole with Nicole Kidman, but also The Starling with Melissa McCarthy. Both great movies, and certainly glad that content like that exists. We kind of can relate a little bit to the protagonists in each case. We're finding that in our dealings with each other, we're all on the same page, speaking of Liz and I and the fam. But how to journey as a family through it, it really takes a village basing intent in the word and having that fellowship together, that quiet time together, everyone being God-centric. We're going after the Lord as a family to help us through this time. And that's not being over spiritual, it's just being real. It's like we know we need to rely on God like never before to get through this. There's a right way to grieve. There's a right way to I guess even suffer in grief and mourn the right way. But it's been an uphill challenge at times, and that's almost by design, I feel like. Like, it's not supposed to be easy. But the grief journey certainly has been there. What happened the last quarter of last year, October was the celebration of life, and then there was that news story that broke towards the end of the month. We were on this News Channel 4, their surprise squad blessed us in the Vanderbilt NICU. Let's see, November, we're still kind of almost in denial, kind of going through the 5 stages, but we're kind of still too stunned. And then December, we had our eye around Thanksgiving, on December being a project month where we were doing those 100 gift bags for NICU families. And we were in mission mode that entire month, I feel like. It was weird because I almost felt like it was a December without a Christmas. I know there were some health issues. And by the way, I'm getting to a big reveal as far as what happened in case, some of you are just tuning in for the first time. But we were still kind of in that missional project-based place, and that kind of put a cap on as far as being able to process through grief. We were, again, still in a stunned place, the best way I know how to describe it. So really, when the clock turned 23, I feel like the floodgates opened, the dam burst, so to speak, and we just kind of came out feeling very flat after the holidays. And we found out mid-December that we were pregnant again. We weren't trying to. Only 2 months after we lost Juju, the last of the small fries came into being, and I'll be honest, my initial reaction was, I'm excited. I'm stoked. This is great. I can immediately see the redemptive narrative unfolding before my eyes. And then it settled like, wow, we're not ready though. It's just hashtag too soon. We haven't gotten that point emotionally of being able to feel ready for another. Odds are we would have tried, but we weren't, long story short, we weren't trying to get pregnant. We weren't trying to replace. We came into this year a little nervous that people would have assumed we were trying to replace. That's not it at all. I know it looks suspicious. I know it seems like, we were trying to dive in and, have kind of a redo, so to speak. Not the case at all. But still, God's ministry of reconciliation has applied to our circumstances. That's been felt the whole way. So initially, there was rejoicing, and then that kind of buzz fell off heading in towards January. You just kind of, not ready for it. And financially, also not just emotionally, but financially, it's just like we're still reeling in a place of reeling. We're not financially ready. So I just felt very irresponsible, so to speak. Now, January, there was finally a promotion at work that took effect. I think this is the first time I am cutting a pod where senior is the first word in my job description or in my job title. And that's great. 3 years of hard work has paid off, but certainly, like Liz is tight now, we are in a tight place, and we're just trying to, every day, it's just how can we save? How can we not spend? How can we be frugal? Again, that's not why I'm cutting this, but it's certainly part of the, when we look back, it's just we're trying to prepare ourselves for what is coming July 28th this month. Liz has a C-section. Eiley, her name, A-I-L-I, the last of the small fries will arrive by C-section, a different type of C-section than the one administered when we gave birth to Juby, again, August of 21. So kid number 5, but one is now enjoying the celestial confines. This is number 4. And we had, from almost all of 21, we embraced for a homecoming for Juju that never happened. Juju never got the chance to come home. And her testimony is a gift. Her life was such a gift. I'm telling you, I could look it back and see, if she was never supposed to, and I'm in some ways glad she didn't, because it would have been harder. There's no memories at all of Juju at home. We were, there was such a divide and conquer, the whole thing with the Juju journey. I mean, it's like it could have split Liz and I up. And even if, we have to be intentional with each other, and there's marital, there's lessons in marriage and I guess marital ramifications worth talking about as well. It's just we've had to be on the same page. But it's almost like this new life in the making has kept us even more bonded. And there's a sweetness to it, even though emotionally I don't feel ready, financially. A lot's been out of pocket this year because the benefits of my work aren't good. It's been a by faith year, just trusting the Lord to provide for our needs. And just Lord, have you called us here? Have you called to stay the course here? If so, then we're going to trust you. And just like we know we need to trust you, and rely on you, everything for goodness and godliness, you sustain us through those pieces of your nature. You're going to get us through this one way or another. That said, it's worth saying, this is the most free agent year I feel like ever in my entire life. It's the most open season year that I can recall since 2019. And it's not my place to be specific. I'm just going to say, in terms of outside of immediate family, as far as how life looks everywhere else, it could look very different at this time next year. And in many ways, I hope it looks different. There are times where we just feel a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that's like, okay, almost like I sense God is doing something. There's change in the horizon. Yeah, stay the course, but there's also like, I'm about to release you into a new, not necessarily better, but just a new. And that new is something that we crave. And it's like, you kind of feel like you're not far from like what you want from being part of God's will. A lot of times we want change. We want to force the issue. We want to make things happen. We want to get out of things. We want to quit things. We want to start new endeavors and pursuits prematurely before we're ready, or they're even ready for us. And you have to wait and be patient. It's hard. And just letting God be God. And it's part of that full life surrender. All right. First half lessons. Here we go. Again, no particular order. Boundaries. Number one, boundaries are an amazing thing when they are based in health and life wellness, where self-preservation isn't the primary driver, but an overflow nonetheless. I think many times going back to the point I was making a few moments ago, we manufacture parameters that keep us comfortable, sometimes sheltered. And as far as how this fits into life, I mean, Liz being at high risk pregnancy, I mean, she has a high risk moniker because of what happened with Juju. Once you have a micro preemie you've had preeclampsia, she's had preeclampsia, her placenta failed with Juju, high blood pressure, hypertension, all those things. It doesn't matter. Like, even if you've changed your diet, you've changed everything about your approach to life wellness. I mean, you're still going to have the high risk with any pregnancy moving forward, like thereafter. So we've had to cut things out of our life intentionally, proactively, to ensure Eileen's health is preserved, to ensure that Lys's health is optimally maximized to God's intent. We've had to keep that in mind. And so Liz and I have had to take inventory of just the things in our life that are robbing us of life, of health, that are causing anxiety. We've had to break down and chart out the things that just naturally, organically give us, unholy griefs, unholy sorrows, not just regrets, but it's mostly anxiety based. Things that get the hypertension, the high blood pressure. We've had to take inventory of those things and cut them out, like, for a short time. And what's hard about it, and I think some of us have been there too, it's just, we're not making excuses. We're going through another year of pregnancy and labor and discomfort there. So it's been a year of, and I probably should have mentioned this a few moments ago as well, talk about an awkward dichotomy where we're trying to recover from grief, or we're going through our grief journey with Juju, but there's a new excitement, there's new life brewing at the same time. Parallel tracks, but going in very different directions. It's like we are going through the valley of processing, the grief journey hand in hand with the Lord, and there's a right way to go about it. I feel like I'm probably need to part two this the more I sound it out. But there's also the anticipation. Like, one of the bright spots of the year, it's been support groups at Vanderbilt, and also discovering a nonprofit, While We're Waiting nonprofit, that helps journey parents through child loss specifically. Discovering other places like that, entities like that we didn't know existed, as part of a support network. It's been building relationships in those support networks. It's been one of the highlights of the year for Liz and I. Even though we're making new friends, new contacts, and these are people for life because they've gone through familiar streams. They've been there. Of course, different set of circumstances. Of course, the people are different in their stories, but they get a big part of you naturally by default. They understand some terms you put out, some word pictures you use. There's just that familiarity and that relatability, and it's just easier to bond with people. And we've sensed that. Liz and I have just had to examine ourselves closely. Like, what are the places of unhealthiness, and how to replace it with healthiness? And surprisingly, things that should be healthy aren't. Things that should be safe places aren't. And that said, it's compelled us to find peace and support and relationship in places we wouldn't have otherwise known to look. And God has led us there. And that's the main thing. It's like, I know it sounds like we're striving. There's no striving here. It's like we just feel like, okay, we need to do this. We're doing it. Okay. So some of you are contending with serious mental and or physical issues. There's limitations that can't be detached from your health. And it's good to adhere to rhythms and routines and dynamics that foster and nurture, all aspects of your well-being. It's the spiritual ties the emotional, the physical. Everything is interlocked, like the rings in the Olympic logo. There's a time to be strong and be like, okay, I don't want to do this. I need to do this. I need to honor this commitment, or I need to, find a new way to honor. And we've behind the scenes have basically restructured our commitments where we're still committed and we're still engaged where we need to be engaged. But the look is different. And sometimes it's just, the visibility needs to back off a little bit. There needs to be a sabbatical with the availability and the visibility, or at least the visibility. The mystery of availability is one that's underrated, and it starts with the spouse, spills over into family. Then you need relationships outside of that to pour into and receive from. And just, again, as long as you're spirit led and you're walking with the Lord and you're in the Word and you're engaged every day and you're praying and you're really making that, okay, I know what I want, but I'm yoked to your guidance. I yield to your leaning in your direction as far as where you're headed. That's where I want to follow, because it's all about following you at the end of the day. So all that being said, boundaries, sometimes you have to put them in place with people. It's like, I can't go here right now. I can't go there right now. We can't talk about this right now. I can't talk about this with you right now. But there will be a time of circling back and just stay engaged and communicate those boundaries clearly, and make sure that when you're communicating them, that there's no offense. That the offense isn't driving it. But that self-preservation isn't driving it either. Let self-preservation be an overflow based out of a true desire to pursue health, and make sure that's known, like the intent is known. I need to get to a healthier place. I need to take a step back so I can focus these relationships, but don't make an excuse either. It's like, I know it sounds like a fine line, but just engage the intent of enforce boundaries, but also make sure that there's a pure place in your heart from where the boundaries are coming from. Point number 2, grief is a gift. I know that sounds weird. You're like doing a double take. What? Grief is a gift? But grief is a gift that allows you to come into context with people. It allows you to come together with people who have been there before. It's basically a kind of an asset in from a communal perspective. And again, a lot of this is coming from what we've encountered in support groups this year. I mean, grief is unique. It really tears down walls and lets you meet with people who understand grief with gentleness and compassion. And again, it's your mystery of availability on tap. It's like you're just being there with people and listening, giving that ear. Let them hear. You're not trying to fix people up, but it just allows you to be humble and vulnerable with people, and your faith shows through those cracks. That's, again, been kind of a crazy storyline where I feel like the hourglass has shifted. It's like we've bonded with complete strangers this year, and we've been able to, those strangers become friends in soon time, but they somehow get you in 15 minutes or less in ways that you have, even family members don't understand and may never understand. There are people we've met who we've known for just a matter of months or weeks, and we're closer to them than we've been with, others that in other places we've known for years, even decades. I hate walls, and I'm prone to want to tear them down. But I think this year, right now, it's just part of, I am weak, but I'm leaning on the Lord who is strong. My weakness, he is strong. I want that to shine forth. And I think it's just, sometimes we want to break down the wall. Sometimes it's better to walk away from them. It sounds passive, but just sometimes let God deal with it. I need to walk away from the walls right now. I mean, who are we to think we could just knock it down alone? I sense this wall. I'm going to break it down any way that I want to and any way that I can. Nope. It goes back to following God's lead and letting him shine light on those he wants to put in your life, who he wants you to sow into. There's people who used to sow who aren't sowing anymore. And I think it takes courage to move on and cut your ties. Not so much loss, but just know what year you're in. What is the present? Embrace the present. Don't torture yourself going through the same motions when they're empty and they're trying to be in the same. There's certain things that need to be in the rearview mirror. Let them be in the rearview mirror. Don't try and keep preserving, how things used to be 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago. Every now and then, just like if God says, hey, reach out to see how they're doing, sure. But don't overtax yourself, extend yourself, being like, I have to be involved in their life like I was in this point. Sometimes you just kind of hit the point where it's like this whole thing needs to be in the rearview mirror now, not just certain components, certain people. So all that being said, I got to get back to the main point, though. Grief is a gift. And I look at Juby's life. Her testimony is an asset in terms of being a witness to those who are confused, who are lost, who are, find themselves in one of the 5 stages. And how can we come into not necessarily fix them, or try to solve the issue with whatever stage our new friend is in, struggling with their grief, but just knowing what it's like to really wrestle and struggle. Like, is God there? Why is letting this happen? Like, struggling with the whys. How come it couldn't have happened a different way? What is he trying to teach me through this? And it's just letting that ministry of reconciliation, being a part of that as an ambassador, but also as one who listens first before just jumping in and tries to counsel. Let the counselor be the counselor. Let the divine, let the Almighty champion the counseling. And it's just like, and lean on him so that what you say is an echo of that you're part of his mouthpiece, but you're not the mouthpiece. If that makes sense. So grief could really be a gift. And that's really the point of number 2. It really can be a way to reach people. And sometimes that's why God calls us to journey through the valley, so that we know what it's like with other people, because we're not going to be able to champion God into their midst or help them find new places of peace and stillness if we hadn't gone through that. Sometimes we need that relatability. So trust God that he gets the big picture. Number 3, last point for today, there's a difference between mourning and grieving. And in either case, there's room for hope, even joy. See, a lot of times we think that they're the same thing. They're not. And also we think we have to get through them to get to the joy, the peace, the hope. And that's not true. They could be concurrent streams. The world needs to know this. They need to see this done well. The world doesn't know. Like, listen, I certainly have gotten this. The world doesn't know how to interact with grief, doesn't know how to respond to it. They're so afraid. People on the other side, they don't want to step on a crack. They don't want to make matters worse. They don't want to say the wrong thing. So they isolate. They actually, they act in a way that's like, it's like, okay, you're excluding us. You're pushing us out. That's not maybe the intent, but it's what it looks like. So we got to make sure that there's no insecurity here. We got to make sure that in all of this, in this entire conversation, offense and insecurity don't have room to grow, because that can only destroy and destruct in a negative way. But yeah, there's people out there who think you have to grieve to mourn only to get to the good stuff. And we got to break that mentality. Think of grief as a container. It holds your thoughts, feelings, and images of your experiences when you lose a loved one, or when maybe a promise dies, not just even a loved one. We're all in different circumstances and seasons, right? I want to be sensitive to that. When something important to us dies, in most cases, a loved one. Grief is the internal meaning given to the experience of loss. It's the war behind closed doors in the cloud space of the heart that only God can see, or your significant other. Mourning is when you take that grief you have on the inside and you express it outside yourself. And that's where it's key. Now it's like you're heading closer to that becoming convertible, almost like potential energy, becoming kinetic energy. And now it's like, okay, you're taking a step towards joy if you mourn the right way. You could mourn and trust God at the same time that, okay, I'm mourning right now, but I know that you're up to something good, and I believe that you are, say you are. And then you just recite the nature of God, like almost declare it to yourself, and just go down a checklist of, this is who God is, and I'm thankful for that. This is what God has done. This is what he's going to do, and I'm thankful for that. Bring gratitude to the mix as you mourn, and you express it outside yourself. So we got to, first of all, understand the difference between mourning and grieving as a culture, as a society, as a body of Christ. And then we have to know that we can't just say anything. We want to help people, but don't help by saying, you're never going to help the mourner, the griever. All right. How can we get you healed sooner, like basically putting a time restraint or a limit on it. As soon as you put a limit on it, you've lost something. And there's now a hindrance on that relationship. And it doesn't matter if you mean well. It's just don't put your own expectations. Don't put pressure. Don't put your pressure on someone else's pain. And the church needs to be a front runner in all this, by the way. It's important to have something set aside, a small group set aside for the specific issue. Again, we got to be careful with expectations. Sometimes that's why church is hard for the grievers. It's like we hear a song and it's hard to receive it. It's hard to declare. It's hard to actually mention the words. It's just like, it breaks your heart. You weep. And it's like people who are grieving, they don't want to be in public. Naturally, it's hard to want to be in places where we might tear up a little bit, maybe be a little bit more expressive in that grief, where we don't want to be public with it. We don't want to be seen. And I know my heart in writing this, it's been prepped. There's no offense. It's just accepting the fact that the body at large doesn't really know and hasn't been trained and hasn't been educated on how to help people with grief. They know how to help their best friends with grief. But if you're outside of their inner circle and you're struggling, we don't know what to do. And that's where it gets messy. It's like we need to be willing to help anyone going through it that we have that proximity to, or anyone that's in our midst. Doesn't matter how we feel like, but I'm not a bestie, I'm not close, and they won't receive. I'm just saying, if we walk with the Lord together, we're supposed to be a community, right? We can't be besties with the world. We can't be besties with everyone, but we got to broaden our inner circle in terms of encouraging people through their mourning, through their grieving, and not putting any pressure of expectation. I desire the church to be a leading witness in that, a front runner in that. So God has been faithful, and just encountering other groups. Some people are called to plant churches, others community of His presence, and it's just like we feel like we are being led in places where we can plant communities of His presence outside the church. We've sensed a positive turn. The last 3 months have been great. The first 3 months were really hard. But part of that just goes back to these 3 points. Embracing grief as a gift, employing some boundaries that didn't exist the first 3 months. We've employed them, and it's made a huge difference. In April, we were able to enjoy a family vacation. On the bright side, we were finally able to get down to Florida, and we had an amazing time, and that kind of reset things. We had that 6, 7, 8 week support group at Vanderbilt. So it was great to be back at home, away from home. Vanderbilt still, it's not hard for Liz and I to be there. It's where Juju passed away, but it became a home away from home. And we know we have so many dear friends there now. It's great to revisit with them ever so often. And then the nonprofit potential partnership there, we'll see where it goes as far as being a part more of the, our place within the While We're Waiting family. Highly recommend you check them out if you know people who have lost loved ones, especially children. They have retreat centers throughout the United States. It's very retreat oriented, and it's a wonderful nonprofit. I encourage you to look more, investigate more for yourself. But that's all I have for today. Just basically, again, looking back, what are we gleaning from the past 6 months? Where we're going. This doesn't really pertain to the future of content on His Girl Friday. Again, there's a book in the making, but I hope to get another, I would say 8 to 10 written posts outside of the book up. And I also just feel convicted that we need to go back to our roots a little bit more, marketplace, vocational, equipping, and resourcing. So just know that that's on my heart as the Juju journey is being filtered through the book process. I hope to educate all, vocationals and bivocationals how to help colleagues at work who are grieving. So I do think that you can, again, go to the 20,000 foot level. And yes, this is not pure marketplace ministry and research that's being put out, but it's not been the focal point of our content for the past couple of years, but we're going to make a turn to that being the focal point, getting back to our premise and our DNA. And maybe there's a splitting out of content where His Girl Friday we change the name and we keep it vocational based, and everything else is moved under to a new umbrella once that umbrella takes shape. Still mulling out the logistics, but that's where we're at. So anyway, guys, I'll peace out. Thank you for listening. I know it's a long pod, but it's also one of the few that's going to be released in 2023. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave us a comment, a prayer request. If you have our contact information, use it. Social media, whether there's a comment, we look forward to hearing from you, or if you want to shoot us a direct message. Instagram should have that feature, Facebook, not sure about YouTube, but find a way to contact us. I know there's an element in our website or a page on our website that you can leave a comment. It has our direct information there too. So have a wonderful week and hope you have a wonderful 4th. Stay safe, stay healthy. And as I always say, I'll catch you on the fry. Peace.